The judge's gavel came down like a verdict on Amanda's entire existence.
Custody of Lily and Noah is hereby granted to the father, Victor Caldwell.
Amanda heard the words. She understood them individually, but strung together like that, in that order, in that courtroom, they didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. She was their mother. She packed their lunches. She knew Noah's nightmares and Lily's favorite song and the exact way both of them needed to be held when the world got too loud. But none of that was in the court documents Victor's lawyer had filed. What was in those documents was a carefully constructed lie. Missed school pickups that never happened. Emotional instability backed by a therapist Amanda had never visited. A drinking problem manufactured from 2 photos taken at a cousin's wedding 3 years ago. Victor had spent 14 months building a case against her, and Amanda had spent those same 14 months trusting that the truth would be enough. It wasn't. "You will vacate the marital home within 48 hours, the judge continued. "Mr. Caldwell will assume full ownership pending final settlement proceedings." Amanda turned to look at her children. Lily was 8. Noah was 6. They were sitting with Victor's sister on the other side of the courtroom, and Lily was already crying, silently, in that heartbreaking way children cry when they've been told to be quiet, but the tears come anyway. Noah didn't fully understand what was happening. He kept looking at Amanda with wide, confused eyes, waiting for her to explain it. She couldn't explain it. Her lawyer touched her arm gently. "Amanda, we need to go." She walked out of that courthouse with a backpack, her phone, and $200 in cash she had hidden inside a library book because Victor had frozen their joint accounts 6 weeks earlier. She stood on the courthouse steps in the October cold, and she didn't cry. Not yet. She was too hollowed out for tears. That evening, she went back to the house one last time to collect what she could. She had been told she had 48 hours, but when she arrived, the locks had already been changed. Her clothes, her books, her grandmother's recipe box, all of it was stuffed into black garbage bags piled on the porch like trash waiting for collection day. She was dragging the second bag toward the sidewalk when she heard the front door open. "Lily, get back inside." Victor's voice was sharp and controlled. "Mommy." Lily broke into a run, crossing the porch and the small strip of lawn and throwing her arms around Amanda's waist before Victor could stop her. Amanda dropped the bag and held her daughter so tightly it must have hurt, but Lily didn't let go. "I don't want you to go," Lily whispered. I told them I want to stay with you." "I know, baby." Amanda pressed her lips to the top of her daughter's head. "I know." Victor appeared on the porch. He didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice in public. That was the thing about Victor that had taken Amanda so long to understand. His cruelty was always quiet, always deniable, always wrapped in the language of reasonableness. "Lily," he said, "inside now." Lily looked up at her mother. "Will I see you soon?" Amanda forced herself to smile. "Very soon, I promise." She watched Victor steer Lily back through the front door. The door closed. The porch light went off, and Amanda stood in the dark on the sidewalk in front of a house that used to be hers, surrounded by garbage bags full of her life. She took what she could carry. She left the rest. By 10 o'clock, she was sitting in the fluorescent light of a bus station, her backpack wedged between her feet, watching a janitor mop the same square of floor over and over. She had no plan. She had no family in the city. Her mother had passed 2 years ago, and the grief of that loss had been one of the things Victor had twisted into evidence against her. She bought a cup of vending machine coffee. It tasted like burnt cardboard. She drank the whole thing. At 2:13 in the morning, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb move to accept the call. Silence first, then a voice, older, female, cautious. "Is this Amanda Caldwell?" "Yes." "I need you to listen carefully." A pause. "Victor lied in that courtroom today about all of it." Amanda sat up straight. "Who is this?" The line went dead. She stared at the phone in her hand. Her heart was slamming against her ribs. She called the number back immediately. It rang once, twice, then a disconnected tone. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in that bus station with the burned coffee taste on her tongue and the stranger's voice circling in her head, and she thought about Lily's arms around her waist, and she decided, quietly and without drama, that she was not going to disappear. If you've ever felt like the whole world turned against you at once, stay with this story. Because what Amanda built from here is going to change the way you think about starting over. Like this video and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one, and keep watching, because this is only the beginning. The next morning, she walked out of the bus station and started looking for work. It did not go well. She had a degree in marketing, 8 years of professional experience, and a resume that should have opened doors. But she had also just lost a custody battle in a small city where Victor Caldwell was a respected name. Word moved fast in places like this. 2 interviews were canceled the morning of. One hearing manager recognized her last name and suddenly had no positions available. A restaurant that had posted a sign in the window told her the position had just been filled when she walked through the door. Without income, no landlord would take her. Without an address, her options collapsed further. She spent 2 nights at a shelter and 1 night in a park before she made herself move. She was cutting through an industrial district on the south side of the city when she saw it. Behind a chain-link fence, in a scrapyard full of broken equipment and rusted metal, was a coffee cart. Old, battered, one of the wheels completely seized. The canopy was torn. The machine inside looked like it hadn't been used in years, but the frame was solid. The structure was there. She stood at that fence for a long time. Then she found the owner of the scrapyard, a man named Gerald who smelled like motor oil and spoke in complete sentences only when absolutely necessary. "That coffee cart," she said, "is it for sale?" Gerald squinted at her. "It's junk. Everything has a price." He named one. She countered. They settled on $180, leaving her $20 to her name. Gerald threw in a tow to a nearby parking lot as part of the deal, grumbling the entire time. Amanda stood in that parking lot and looked at what she had just bought with almost every dollar she had left. The cart was worse up close. There was mold on the inside of the canopy. The espresso machine had a cracked component she wasn't sure she could fix. One of the wheels was welded to the frame by rust. She pulled a cloth from her bag and started cleaning. She worked on that cart for 3 days straight. She slept beside it on a piece of cardboard, woke before sunrise, and went back to work. She watched YouTube tutorials on her phone with 20% battery, learned how to diagnose an espresso machine, found a replacement part at a junk shop 2 miles away for $4, and reinstalled it using a screwdriver she borrowed from Gerald, who had started appearing occasionally at the fence to watch her progress without commenting. On the 3rd morning, she pressed the machine's power button and it hummed to life. She named it Second Chance Coffee. She painted the name herself in white letters on the side of the cart, using a brush she found in an art supply dumpster and a can of paint that cost $3.50. The letters weren't perfect, but they were hers. She set up at a corner 2 blocks from a downtown office building on a Tuesday morning. She had spent her last $16 on coffee supplies, a bag of paper cups, and a small handwritten menu. Her hands were shaking when the first potential customer walked past. The person walked past without stopping. The next 3 did the same. At 9:47 a.m., a woman in a yellow coat slowed down, read the menu, and said, "How much for a latte?" $3.50, Amanda said. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. The woman ordered. Amanda made it. The woman tasted it, looked surprised in a good way, and said, "This is actually really good." That day she served 2 customers. She made $7. She used 4 of it to eat and saved the rest. The second day she got 5 customers. The third day, rain came and wiped out her supplies, and she stood under the torn canopy, watching everything she had set up dissolve in the water, and she pressed both hands flat on the cart's counter and breathed. In and out, in and out. She did not quit. She dried out, resupplied with the money she'd made, and went back the next morning. Victor's house was 4 blocks from her corner. She didn't choose the location because of that. She chose it because of the office building foot traffic. But sometimes she would catch herself looking east, toward the neighborhood where her children were waking up and eating breakfast without her. On a Thursday, 2 weeks after she started, she was restocking cups when she realized she was standing directly across the street from Lily and Noah's school. She had taken a different route that morning without thinking. She stopped completely. Noah was in the yard before school started, running with 2 other boys, laughing that full-body laugh he had where his whole face disappeared into it. Lily was sitting on a bench near the fence reading a book, the way she always did, the way Amanda had taught her to love doing. Amanda stood across the street and watched her children for 4 minutes. She counted the seconds. She could not approach them. The court order was specific about unsupervised contact. If she crossed that street, if she set foot on that school property, Victor's lawyers would have her back in court by afternoon. Lily looked up from her book. For a moment, just one moment, she looked directly across the street. Amanda raised her hand. Lily raised hers back. Then a teacher appeared at the school door and Lily went inside. Amanda walked back to her cart and made coffee and smiled at every single customer who came that day, because she needed to hold onto something, and that small wave, that tiny moment of contact, was all she had. She was unlocking the cart one morning in her 3rd week when she noticed the envelope. It was tucked under the counter, folded once, no name on the outside. She looked around the empty street, no one nearby. She opened it. Inside was a single photocopied page, an email chain. The names at the top had been redacted, but the content was clear enough. Someone was discussing how to ensure a particular witness would remember correctly during family court proceedings. There was a dollar amount mentioned. There was a reference to a judge's scheduling preference. Amanda read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, put it in her jacket pocket, and made coffee for 6 straight hours while her mind worked in the background like a machine she couldn't switch off. She told no one. Not yet. She didn't know who to trust. She didn't even fully know what she was holding, but she knew it was something, and she knew it hadn't appeared by accident. 3 days later, a second envelope. This one contained a screenshot of a bank transfer, a large amount, moving from an account she didn't recognize into one she did, Victor's business account. Then a third. This one was handwritten, just 3 words. Keep building this. She stood at her cart and read those 3 words and felt something shift inside her chest. Someone was watching her. Someone who knew what had happened to her, someone who had access to information she wasn't supposed to have, was telling her to keep going. So she kept going. Her regulars started coming every morning. There was Marcus, a security guard who always ordered black coffee and always called her boss, in a way that made her laugh. There was Denise, who worked reception at the law firm on the corner and started bringing her colleagues. There was an elderly man named Henry who took 45 minutes to drink a single cup of decaf and told her a different story about his late wife every single morning. They didn't know her full story. She hadn't told anyone, but people could sense something in Amanda's coffee, or maybe in Amanda herself, something that felt like it had been tested and hadn't broken. One morning, she hung a piece of cork board on the side of the cart. She pinned a blank card to it with a pen attached by a string. She wrote at the top, "Say what you can't say out loud." By noon, 3 customers had pinned cards to it. One said, "I'm scared I made the wrong choice and I can't undo it." Another said, "I haven't spoken to my sister in 4 years and I miss her every single day." The third said, "I almost didn't make it. I'm glad I did." By the end of the week, the board was full. She had to add a second one. She called it the truth wall. Word spread the way things spread when they're real, not because of any strategy or campaign, but because people were hungry for something honest. A local blogger photographed the truth wall and wrote 2 paragraphs about it. Those 2 paragraphs got shared. More people came. More cards appeared. Then came the veteran. His name was Robert. He arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in clothes that had seen better decades, moving slowly, sitting on the curb near her cart because there was nowhere else to sit. He didn't have money for coffee. Amanda made him one anyway, a proper one, full-sized, no charge, and sat beside him on the curb for 15 minutes while they drank together. A customer filmed it from across the street, posted it that night. By Friday morning, the video had 3 million views. Hold on tight, because everything is about to change, and you do not want to miss where this story goes next. Subscribe and drop a comment below. What do you think is inside those envelopes? Tell me in the comments, because I read every single one. The local news van arrived on a Monday. Amanda saw it pulling up and almost pushed her cart into traffic to escape. She had spent months being invisible by necessity. Cameras felt dangerous. But the reporter, a young woman named Sophia who had the kind of energy that made refusal feel rude, talked to her for 45 minutes, and the segment that aired that evening was 3 minutes long and somehow captured everything. The headline was, "From Court Defeat to Community Coffee, One Mother's Second Chance." Victor saw it. She knew he saw it because his lawyer called her own lawyer, a public defender she was still technically working with on the custody appeal, with a message that could be summarized as, "Tell your client to keep a lower profile," which told Amanda that Victor was paying attention, which told her that something she was doing was making him uncomfortable, which told her to keep going. Coffee sales doubled in the week after the news segment, then doubled again. She started a wait list for custom orders. She hired her first employee, a single mother named Priya who had answered a handwritten job posting Amanda taped to the truth wall that said, "Looking for someone who needs a break as much as I do." She bought a second cart. More anonymous envelopes continued to arrive, always early in the morning, always tucked under the counter, always containing pieces of a picture she was slowly assembling. Financial records, text message screenshots, a transcript excerpt from a deposition she had never seen, each piece pointing in the same direction, building the same argument, making the same case. Victor hadn't fought for custody of his children because he loved them. Victor had fought for custody because of what the children were connected to. Amanda didn't yet know what that was. The envelopes gave her fragments, not the whole image, but they kept saying, "Look closer, look at the money." Then the final envelope arrived with an address. No explanation, just an address on the north side of the city and the words, "Room 212, ask for a leaner." Amanda left Priya in charge of both carts and took a bus to the north side. The address was a nursing home. Clean, quiet, the kind of place where every surface was beige and the television in the common room played the same cooking shows on a loop. A nurse at the front desk pointed her toward the elevator. "Room 212. She knocked. "Come in." The woman in the room was in her 70s, white-haired, sitting upright in a chair by the window with a sharpness in her eyes that age hadn't touched. She looked at Amanda for a long moment before she spoke. "You look like someone who's been through something," the woman said. "I have," Amanda said. "Are you a leaner?" "Eleanor Brooks," she gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, I've been waiting for you to be ready." Her last name hit Amanda like a stone dropping into still water. Brooks, Victor's mother's maiden name. She had never met Victor's mother. Victor had said she was dead. "You sent the envelopes." Eleanor nodded slowly. "I sent them when I thought you were strong enough to do something with them. I watched you for a while first. After that night on the news, I knew you were ready." "You know what happened at the custody hearing?" Eleanor's jaw tightened. "I know everything that happened." "I was the one who told Victor how to do it." She looked out the window. "I'm not proud of that. I've been not proud of it every single morning for the past year." Amanda's hands went very still in her lap. "Why? Why would you help him take my children?" "Because Victor told me you were dangerous, that you were unstable, that you were a threat to those Bobbies." She turned back to Amanda. "I believed my son. Mothers often believe terrible things about their sons' wives because it's easier than believing terrible things about their sons. And now I've had a year to sit in this room and think," Eleanor said, "and I've had someone bring me documentation that changed the picture entirely." She reached under the chair and pulled out a shoebox, placing it on the table between them. "Victor is in debt, significant debt. Gambling, mostly. Also some bad business decisions he buried in the company accounts. Amanda stared at the box. Your father, Eleanor continued, left a trust fund for Lily and Noah. I don't know if you knew about it. I knew there was something, Amanda said slowly. My father died when I was pregnant with Noah. The estate lawyers mentioned something, but it was all handled through Victor, and I never. She stopped. You never followed up, Eleanor finished, because you trusted your husband. The silence in the room was very heavy. The trust is substantial, Eleanor said. It can't be touched until the children are adults, but it can be managed by their legal guardian in the interim. Victor had the custody arrangement drafted specifically to establish him as sole legal guardian. He never wanted the children. Her voice cracked slightly on that last sentence. He wanted control of that fund. Amanda said nothing for a long time. Why are you telling me this now? She finally asked. Because he told Noah last month that you had abandoned them. Eleanor's eyes were wet. He told a 6-year-old boy that his mother chose to leave, and someone who works here told me, and I decided I was done being quiet. She pushed the shoebox across the table. Inside, recordings on a small digital device, printed emails, bank statements with amounts circled in red, a letter from the estate lawyers that Victor had intercepted and never forwarded to Amanda, a sworn affidavit from Eleanor herself, already notarized. Amanda picked up each piece and looked at it carefully. Her hands were not shaking. She was surprised by that. She was not angry, exactly. She was something colder and more focused than anger. What do I do with this? She asked. Whatever you think is right, Eleanor said, but I'd suggest doing it somewhere visible. Amanda looked at the shoebox full of evidence and thought about Lily waving from across the schoolyard, and Noah being told his mother had abandoned him, and the unknown caller who had reached her at 2:13 in the morning in a bus station and said Victor lied, and she made a decision. She was going to be very, very visible. The invitation came 6 weeks later. A national daytime talk show, one of the big ones, the kind with a live studio audience and millions of viewers. They had been following the Second Chance coffee story since the viral video. They wanted Amanda on the show, live broadcast, prime slot. She sat in her second cart with the invitation on the counter and Priya watching her from across the small space. And she thought about Eleanor's voice saying somewhere visible, and she picked up the phone and called the show's producer. I'll come, she said, but I have a request. The producers were delighted by her request. They said it would make for extraordinary television. They told her not to tell anyone what they were planning. In the weeks between the invitation and the broadcast, Second Chance Coffee became something Amanda hadn't entirely intended. It became a movement. She had 10 trucks by November. She had hired 23 people, all of them single parents or people in transition, people who had been told no by enough doors that they'd stopped knocking. She trained every single one herself, not just coffee skills, but the other things, how to hold your ground when a customer is condescending, how to handle a bad week without letting it become a bad month, how to recognize when someone standing at your counter isn't just ordering coffee, but asking for someone to see them. The truth wall had become a Second Chance coffee trademark. Every truck had one. There were now thousands of cards on hundreds of walls across the city, and the stories on them were extraordinary, grief and survival and small victories and enormous losses, and the specific human dignity of saying this happened to me and I'm still here. Media attention kept growing. A national magazine ran a feature. A business school asked her to speak. Victor's lawyer sent another letter, more aggressive this time, something about unauthorized use of the children's likenesses in media coverage, which was particularly absurd since Amanda had never once used her children's images publicly. But the letter told her something important. Victor was frightened. He was watching. He was tracking every interview, every article, every inch of ground she gained. And something in the expansion of what she had built was making him move, shift, try to cut her off at angles she hadn't anticipated. Former colleagues of his started calling her. Carefully, tentatively, leaving messages that said things like, "I've been thinking about something I saw a few years ago, and I don't know if this helps, but..." The investigation Aliner's evidence had quietly set in motion was widening. Amanda wasn't the one running it. She didn't have to be. She had handed the shoebox to a lawyer 2 weeks after the nursing home visit. A real one this time, not a public defender. One who had called her back within 4 hours of receiving the documents with the kind of controlled urgency that meant what she had was significant. The night before the broadcast, she couldn't sleep. She drove her original yellow cart to the parking lot where she had first cleaned it, where she had first plugged in the espresso machine and heard it hum. And she sat on the hood and looked at the second chance coffee lettering she had painted herself in imperfect white letters, and she talked to her children even though they couldn't hear her. "I'm coming," she said into the empty parking lot. "Hold on." The studio was bigger than she expected. The audience filled rows of seats, 300 people she didn't know who had seen her story and wanted to be in the room when the next part happened. The host, a woman named Claire who had been on television for 15 years and had a particular gift for the moment when things became real, walked her through the format backstage. Normal interview first. Your story. The coffee trucks. The truth wall. And then the surprise. Amanda sat in the green room and waited and thought about Victor watching. She knew he would be watching. His business associates had confirmed he watched this show every week. His new girlfriend apparently liked it. He would be sitting in that living room with Lily and Noah because it was a Tuesday, because Tuesday was a family viewing night according to the custody arrangement schedule she had memorized like a religious text. They were all going to watch this together. She walked out onto the stage. The audience applauded. The lights were very bright. Claire shook her hand and leaned in and said quietly, "You ready?" "I've been ready for a long time," Amanda said. 20 miles away, Victor Caldwell settled into his couch. Lily was on one side, Noah on the other, both in their pajamas even though it wasn't quite bedtime because Victor occasionally did things like that, let them stay up slightly late for television, because it looked like good parenting. He recognized Amanda before Claire said her name. His jaw tightened. He almost reached for the remote, but Lily said, "Dad, isn't that Mom?" with such uncomplicated hope in her voice that he stopped. "It's fine," he said. "We can watch for a minute." The interview went the way he expected. The coffee cart story, the truth wall, the employees, inspirational music under the clips they showed. Victor watched it all with the careful expression of someone who has prepared for various scenarios. And then Claire said, "We have something special prepared for tonight." Victor's hand moved toward the remote. "Our team has been working with some sources close to this story," Claire said, "and we want to share something with our audience tonight that we believe the public has a right to hear." On screen behind Claire and Amanda, text appeared, an audio file icon, and then a voice. Victor's voice. "The kids are the key. Everything runs through the kids." The living room went very quiet. Victor stood up. This is completely out of context, this is." Lily looked at him. The second recording played. "Once I control the trust fund, I control everything. The business debt disappears. All of it disappears." Noah said, very quietly, "Dad." Victor reached for the remote. His hands were shaking, he clicked it. The television went black, he exhaled. Then Lily's tablet, sitting on the coffee table, lit up automatically. The live stream had pushed to every connected device in the house. The recordings kept playing. Nobody's going to believe Amanda. She's already been ruled an unfit mother. Anything she says now just looks like a bitter ex-wife. Victor grabbed the tablet, threw it face down on the sofa, went for Noah's small handheld screen on the side table. But the recordings were already done. The final one had played. "I don't care about custody. I never cared about custody. I care about the money attached to those kids." The house was completely silent. Noah was looking at the blank television screen. Then he turned to his father. "You only wanted us because of money." Victor opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Dad," Lily's voice was very small, "is that true?" He looked at his daughter's face, and he saw in it something he had never intended to create, the specific look of a child who has just learned that an adult she trusted was not what she believed them to be. He saw it, and he had no answer for it. Both children moved. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly and instinctively, the way people move away from something that has become unsafe. They slid to the far ends of the couch, away from him, and sat there in their pajamas in the too quiet living room and said nothing else. If you've made it this far, you are the exact kind of person this story was made for. Don't go anywhere, because the ending is the part you're going to want to tell someone else about. Subscribe right now, hit the like button, and stay for the final minute. I promise you it's worth it. The fallout was swift and total. By midnight, Victor's name was trending. By morning, 3 major news outlets had picked up the broadcast recordings and were running their own investigations. By the end of the week, 2 of his business partners had issued public statements distancing themselves from him. The estate lawyers who had handled Amanda's father's trust fund announced they were cooperating fully with an independent review. The gambling debts surfaced in a financial publication that specialized in exactly this kind of thing. The witness tampering allegations from the court documents Alina had provided were forwarded to the relevant oversight board. Victor's lawyer, the expensive one who had built the custody case, resigned. Victor Caldwell, who had spent 14 months carefully constructing a version of reality in which he was the responsible parent and Amanda was the unstable one, found that reality does not stay constructed when the recordings get out. The custody case was reopened 6 weeks after the broadcast. Amanda sat in the same courtroom, different energy, the same fluorescent lights, the same wooden benches, but a completely different weight in the room. Her lawyer had the shoebox evidence entered into the record. Alina's affidavit was read aloud. The financial records were presented. The recordings were played again, this time for a judge. Victor's new lawyer argued context and misrepresentation, and a series of other things that fell apart quickly when the financial documentation was laid beside them. The judge called a brief recess. When she returned, she asked to speak with Lily and Noah separately in her chambers without either parent present. Amanda sat in the hallway outside and waited. It was 12 minutes. She counted everyone. When the courtroom reconvened, the judge looked at both parents and said, "I've spoken with both children at length. I've also reviewed the complete record of this case and the newly submitted evidence in full. The children have been asked directly and clearly where they wish to live." She paused. Lily. From where she sat with the court-appointed guardian, Lily looked up. Her voice was very clear. "With my mom." Noah. Noah had his hands folded in his lap the way he always did when he was being careful. "With Mom," he said. "I want to be with Mom." Amanda made a sound she hadn't planned on making. It came out before she could stop it, something between a breath and a word, and her lawyer put a hand on her arm, and Amanda pressed her palm flat on the table in front of her and held on. The judge ruled, full custody to Amanda. Victor granted supervised visitation pending further review of the fraud and tampering allegations. The trust fund was frozen pending investigation. An independent guardian was appointed to protect the children's interests throughout the process. Victor, for the first time in all of this, looked small. Amanda didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She walked out of the courtroom with one hand holding Lily's and the other holding Noah's, and they stepped out into the afternoon, and Noah immediately said, "Can we get coffee? Like, real coffee from your truck." And Lily laughed and Amanda laughed, and it was the first real laugh she'd had in over a year, and it felt like something breaking open in the best possible way. 3 weeks later, Amanda drove her original yellow cart to a spot she had chosen carefully. The corner 2 blocks from the office building where she had started, where she had served 2 customers on her first day and made $7 and eaten 4 of it and saved the rest. Lily and Noah were beside her in the front, Lily with her book open in her lap, Noah with his face pressed against the passenger window watching the city go by. A reporter from the same local news station that had run the original segment flagged her down. "Amanda, one question. If Victor were here right now, what would you say to him?" Amanda considered this. She wasn't performing. The pause was real. "Thank you," she said. The reporter blinked. "Thank you for taking your house, your children." Amanda looked at her children. Noah had looked up from the window. Lily had closed her book. Both of them were watching her, waiting for the answer, and she realized this was the moment, not the television broadcast, not the courtroom, but this one, on a street corner with her kids beside her and the coffee cart humming behind her. "Because if he hadn't taken everything," she said, "I never would have found out how much I was capable of building." The reporter looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at the yellow cart, at the second chance coffee letters, slightly imperfect, painted by hand. That evening, the clip aired again. It was reshared hundreds of thousands of times. Eleanor Brooks watched it from her chair in room 212 and allowed herself a small smile. Priya watched it from the new flagship location she was managing on the east side. Marcus, the security guard who always ordered black coffee and called her boss, watched it on his phone during his break and sent her a thumbs up without comment because Marcus was a man of economy. And down the highway, in a line that had not existed 14 months ago, 53 yellow coffee trucks rolled toward their morning positions across the city, each one with a truth wall on its side, each one staffed by someone who had needed a second chance, and found one. Each one carrying the name Amanda Caldwell had painted by hand on the first cart she ever owned with the last money she ever almost spent on something that almost didn't work. Second chance coffee. The first truck, the original, was still yellow and still slightly imperfect and still hers. And inside it, for the first time in over a year, her children were laughing. The end. If this story hit you somewhere real, you know what to do, like subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear that starting over is not the same as giving up. See you in the next one.